All right, welcome everybody. We have a special guest, Dinuka, with us. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm happy to be here. Super excited.
I'm happy to have you here. Well, first off, I'd like to start my podcast with the cheers. So, cheers for you to say thank you for coming on.
Cheers to.
Virtual cheers.
Mm-hmm.
But all the listeners need to know who you are because you're amazing, and we're in for such a special treat today that I think it's really important for people to know what other people say about you because it's very complimenting and it'll give them a really big perspective on what a treat
I
we're
hope
in
it
for
does that.
today. So sit back and relax. I'm gonna let everybody know a little bit about you. All right. So this is what people say about you. So I did my homework. Okay, so Dinuka's advice as a career coach, he is knowledgeable and a passionate individual. He has worked in the field for so long that he can share his experience on possibilities and constraints. I would highly recommend him to anyone interested in career development. When I reached out to Dinuka 4 months ago on LinkedIn asking for career coaching, I was not expecting to meet the most thoughtful, kind, and generous career coach. From the very first meeting, Dinuka was beyond and above, going above and beyond to support me in everything I had to do within Canada, which was amazing. Dinuka is the type of person you genuinely want to be involved in your professional endeavors. He is brilliant, helpful, and fun. As a leader, Dinuka always has his students' best interests in mind. He is committed to creating a trusting, safe, and supportive relationship to self-empower his students and allow them to fully realize their true potential. And with over 15 years of experience in the Canadian higher education, Dinuka is a seasoned professional leader in the field. So the last one, Dinuka, I actually wrote about you. And I think it's important for us just to take a minute to, you're really putting a lot of good in the world. You're going above and beyond. And for all the listeners, I am not exaggerating when Dinuka has like 100 amazing comments about what a good human being is being. And just really adding value to the career space and impacting a lot of students and a lot of colleagues. So cheers, Dinuka. It was so cool going on and seeing, oh my goodness, I was to the point where I'm like, do I have to get this guy's signature? Because he's great.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That was very kind of you. Yes, when you have fun doing what you love, that you can have positive impact. But by no means am I perfect or like, just somebody who brings all those things. I have my elements where I struggle with the mistakes I've made. And the only, kind of my goal in life is to try to do the best I can and just own all my actions and the reactions that they caused, whether they're good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah, well, it's very insightful. And as I was reading those, I thought I read the one I wrote about you, but I didn't. So I have to still read it because I put some real thought into writing this for you.
Oh,
So we're just gonna keep going, Dinuka. Why not? Right? We have time.
apparently.
This is just
I don't
gonna be
even know
a
what to
session
do
of
here, but
you.
okay, go on.
Dinuka is a bright light. His passion and energy to ensure students are receiving the best is next level. He is dedicated and determined to make a difference. I'm so happy I got the opportunity to know him, and every time I speak with him, he motivates me to push myself to reach new levels. So that one's for
Wow.
me.
That's also very kind and generous. Thank you. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and just a little bit more. So I mentioned that you have 15 years of experience in the
Hmm.
higher education space. Currently, you're the director of career development and experiential learner at Northeastern University, and also you play a big part in different boards across the career development space. You're part of the board of CERIC, CWIL, and also the research committee of Casey. So you have a huge involvement there. So with all of that, can you share a little bit about your journey in the field of education and what really inspired you for your whole career path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be very surprising if you were to go back in time and actually talk to the 19 or 20-year-old Dinuka and like kind of tell them what I'm doing now, because I think that would be a big shocker. But yeah, I came to Canada about 17 years ago, in 2007, actually. I don't even know if that's 17 or 18 now. But to do my undergrad as an international student. And really interestingly, my whole education and background was in life sciences, and particularly in zoology as a focus, which is, at that time was something that I was very passionate about. And I think it's still very much a part of my life. I enjoy nature, the natural world. But as an undergrad, I thought that's where my career or vocation would even get evolved into, and really enjoyed my time at university. Lots of life experiences. Came through as an undergrad, and there was a moment of, I would say, happenstance, in a sense, that kind of took me in another wonderful journey. And where it came down to is I graduated and I was going to do a master's degree studying bird migration. And A colleague of mine that I had worked with on campus as a on-campus student employee reached out and said there was a role within the International Student Office uh, coming up because of a coordinator leaving in a kind of a not so great time in the year for that role to be vacant. And they called and said if I was interested in it, because I've worked with them throughout the years as a student staff member, that they'd actually seriously consider me given the timeline. And I just leaned in, and I said yes, and that led to that
Wow.
first role. And I was going to go back to do grad school, and I had another kind of contact within a partner on campus that reached out and said there was another role when that contract was coming to an end, which also I said yes to, and was successful, and went into alumni relations and fundraising, which was an area that I had never dreamed of ever being in, and so on and so forth. And then 7 institutions later, here we are. And what is cool about this whole journey is that it's taken me across Canada to various cities, various roles, and the roles have been quite broad until I kind of landed in career development at my time in Alberta, at the University of Alberta, and kind of fell in love with it. It brought together, I think, what I was naturally always uh, was was doing among my peers and colleagues. I was always very curious about people and their worlds and their lives and what motivated them,
Yep.
and that kind of related space is what created my career in career development and coaching.
Wow. What an interesting story. I had no idea you went from zoology and this passion into careers and
Yeah.
helping, students get their dream jobs and,
Mhm.
wow, that is
And
incredible.
then in between fundraising, I did alumni relations and events and communications. So there was a bunch of different things in between as well. And I think that's what excites me about career development and careers of people, is that it's not linear as
Yeah.
many seem to think. And you look at traditional roles and you see linear kind of spaces, like let's say an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor. But even if you dig deeper and like actually meet one of those professionals and like listen and be curious about their worlds, there's nothing linear about what we do. And that's, I think, what excites me. It's that it's unpredictable, and there's so many possibilities. And it's like, for somebody like me with my curiosity, it's amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one thing when we met initially, my excitement with you is your openness to technology of what is this? How does it work? Could it potentially help my students, or how can it be used? So you can definitely see that through talking with you and your passion, and based on everything I just said about you, you're really open to innovation. So with that being said, I mean, there's a lot of emerging trends right now in innovation. What are you seeing in the education space as far as that go?
I think, yes, these are broad conversations that are currently happening in the landscape. And I believe we're at a point in time where technology is going to rapidly infiltrate and evolve all facets of life, right? And we were in an age of information and technology before AI or the release of tools like ChatGPT. But I think that point in time in which we were exposed to kind of AI for the average consumer just accelerated the world in a way that I think even the you know the world itself was not prepared or was ready to take on. And that also came at the helm of our generation having navigated the pandemic. That was also something we all experienced together, right? The COVID-19 pandemic. So what is cool about this for me is that there were these two big events that I think will define our history and will be part of history books, was experienced by everyone, kind of in a sense. The pandemic, for sure, I think it impacted everybody in a collective conscience. But I also think like elements of AI and ChatGPT and so on and so forth is experienced by people across the globe, at least at a certain like level as well. And it's in, and now it's impacting education. So the pandemic had an impact in education. Now AI technology is having an impact in education. And, when you're confronted with these spaces, I think, innovation or like the idea of innovation can actually be very anxiety provoking to people because we even haven't had time to really grieve or to reflect and think about what the change has been like. Are we aware of it? Are we, capable of accepting it? So things are happening rapidly. And so when I think of education and innovation, I am excited by it. On one front, actually excited, like massively excited by it, but also part of me is terrified by it because I feel like, it's going to create a space where I don't know if humanity can keep up and kind of keep with that rapid pace of innovation and change, um, but being kind of stuck in between those two worlds. Very classic Dinuka, actually. Always stuck between two sides of a coin. But I find a lot of hope as an educator and understanding that maybe I may have a space in helping people navigate that change and navigate the change within themselves.
That's a very interesting perspective, and I haven't heard anyone say your perspective yet of really incorporating, well, we have COVID-19 and AI, and it kind of no one had time to digest because it was like we had the pandemic and then we were back to school, and then it was like AI boom is here when everyone's back on campus. So you mentioned the word anxiety, and one interesting article I read a couple weeks ago was a new generation, so Generation Alpha, I believe. They
Mhm.
did a study and they're saying that 87% of these of this generation, I bet you it's a lot of generations to be honest, have menu ordering anxiety. So when they go into a restaurant, they're feeling anxious when they have to speak to the waiter and order something. Can you speak to me a little bit about the implications you see of, the importance of communication skills, critical thinking, EQ skills, and how important it is now more than ever that AI is really taking away that low hanging fruit?
Mm-hmm. So I think I mean, there's a lot to unpack in this space. So there's a whole world on ethics that we can unpack, but just focusing in on the anxiety,
Yeah.
uh, and kind of the skills that people need to develop. I think this Gen Alpha or Gen AI, we call them, uh, actually more so than ever, it is, I believe, is a generation that is going to need to really lean into being human because the technical pieces, elements, repetitive tasks, tasks that we used to do, and actually tasks that sometimes brought a lot of people like calm and quiet and peace because they knew what to click and you can keep doing it. It's all disrupted.
Yes.
So essentially the world is thrusted into an abstract human space that
Yeah.
I think the majority of the society that liked predictability and being able to kind of have that control has been taken away from them, and technology is doing them now. And so therefore, like a large group of people are trying to adapt to that. And but people like me, like I mean, I thrive in that chaos. But I would say I would fall into that minority. Actually, most of the world, because we are a society, is not in anarchy because most of the humans, by
Right.
personality, actually like to have structure. And now that
Right.
structure is being done by tech, and so now we have to find ourselves in how do we do that. And so human skills are going to be really important. And I think the interesting space for us as educators to think about is that how are we helping people build those skills in the spaces that we occupy as educators. So whether it's in the classroom or in work integrated learning spaces or experiential learning spaces, and how we think about it in an innovative kind of way so that people see the value of it. So the person who used to, maybe find a lot of solace in, I, can take on a role that was about coding to now you're telling me many of that spaces that I felt safe at is not going to exist anymore. And now I have to be like this raging extrovert and manage this multitude of layers of and it then affects people's well-being. So how do we do that? How do we introduce that incrementally and slowly, and maybe even use the technology at our like fingertips to make that process easy. So
Exactly.
yeah, so that's kind of how I'm thinking about all of this. And but I do worry, and I think it's kind of always like an ebb and flow or
Yeah.
push and pull when I think about these things.
Well, and one thing I'm always concerned about and always learning about is how fast, and I had this in my previous career. I spent 10 years in corporate banking, in the training space, and things move slow. And where my fear comes in is, can, these corporations and educational institutions move fast enough? Because to your point earlier, the AI and the technology is moving fast. So can these big organizations keep up and move fast enough to accommodate their employees and to accommodate students to make sure they're being supported and really on the cutting edge of what the society expects? Like now, as a company, we won't hire anyone if they don't have AI experience. So how quickly is that changing, and are we preparing our employees, are we preparing our students to already have that experience, or are we saying, no, don't use these tools because they're wrong, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's, my biggest concern is how can we get these change makers and these leaders running these institutions and running these corporations to make these moves quick when they're so used to making them slow.
Yeah. And I think change is slow in large organizations because change again is about people, and change can create a lot of stress and anxiety, and so
Yeah.
you're thinking in these spaces. What I am interested in exploring more is around knowing that AI is here to stay, and
Yep.
technology advancement is here to be rapid and be rapid as it gets. Um, I believe what's really, really key here is to know that, you know, AI in itself is not, or like technology in itself is not what we need to actually focus on. It's about how we are democratizing the access to technology and tools. Because Michael Watkins, who is, thought leader, a Canadian, who's written The First 90 Days, an amazing book that I've really enjoyed. But anyways, I follow him on social media, and he actually recently talked about how AI creates these workplace Jedis. And for me, how he kind of unpacked that was the quick adopters who would use tools and technology, and then they would get ahead very quickly. And
Right.
because, now they're 3 times as productive than maybe the person who didn't want to. And they
Right.
will noticed and recognized and supported, or they are the people who had the resources and, the knowledge, maybe it's money or social capital or whatever, and they would have access to things, and so they can get ahead. And then they will become the leaders of the
Yeah.
space, and it becomes like a uniformed potential world where then that's that doesn't mean they're the smartest people in the room, or they're the people who should be even leading necessarily. They were just street smart, or tech savvy enough to get ahead. And so his thinking here is that we should, as organizations, take priority in, as you said, teaching people what AI is, giving people access to tools and technology and bringing them along so that everybody can, have the same advantages. And so that again, there'll be a semblance of uh, diversity among, the leaders and the people who are, going to be leading the world, compared to not doing that. And then actually the inequities we already see will start becoming even more and more. And there will be a world that um, yeah, might not really be set up for success.
I
And so
agree.
yeah.
I agree 100%. That's such a great point. And I think you brought up a good point about the leadership. I think that, leaders that are willing or, willing to embrace the technology will naturally, and I never thought of it in that light, but they'll naturally kind of give the people that are unsure or scared of it, they'll be able to lead the pack, right, and say this is okay, here's ways to do it, and they'll be able to guide people that might be uncomfortable with change through, all these changes happening. So I think you brought up such a great point that a lot of people will enjoy listening to.
Yeah, no, I hope, and or at least get them thinking.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a different perspective. And what was that? Do you mind repeating the person you were following? Because anyone listening, they might want to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is Michael Watkins. And Michael Watkins wrote a very famous book. It's called probably the Bible of Leadership Transitions, and First 90 Days. And he's a Waterloo grad and Canadian. I think he
Oh, the
lives either in
Waterloo
Europe or
grad.
in the U. Yeah, it was really neat, and I found it to be very sensible, and the things he shared, as kind of the knowledge base, made sense, like just by I think just naturally feeling like those were things that were happening within people, and that just maybe people don't pay attention to. And what I like about a lot of the dialogue he has on LinkedIn, is that it's kind of grounded in yeah, being curious but asking critical questions uh, about what the future like the world would look like with AI in it, from kind of doom and gloom all the way to more like, very hopeful bringing spaces. And I think that's the kind of space that we need to help our students enter, is to critically think, look at different ideas, and rather than just taking it as fact, analyze it, and then understanding your value system. And and I'm not here to influence anybody's values. I'm just here to help people uncover their values, and then
Yeah.
people can have good dialogues.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And to your point earlier, there's just so many use cases of AI that I think people don't even realize what's coming. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this one yet, but apparently you can take a picture of your fridge and it'll tell you what you can make for dinner because it's taking all the ingredients in your fridge and then giving you a recipe. The other interesting thing that I heard was, and it's about to be released, where you can put text into like one of the open AIs and then it will create a video for you.
Yeah, no, I have tried some of that already. Yeah, absolutely. And given that my work is mostly these days with, computer science grads, there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of really amazing things you can do. And I think it's a matter of yeah, exactly, adopting and leaning in and being curious. I think there's a lot of opportunity to yeah, like find like time that you would have not had otherwise, and then being smart with that time. And if that time, if it's what it looks like is to go out and spend time with friends, family, and loved ones, and then do it. Uh,
I agree. I agree 100%. Well, yesterday I have all these great marketing videos and I was like, well, what do I do? I don't have the brain power right now. I'm so busy.
Mm.
And I went on and I talked to, one of these AI digital humans and asked like, what are ways I can market? Here's who I'm talking to. And he told me exactly what to do. And afterwards, honest to God, Dinuka, I felt so much better. I just because it was like you're talking to someone and there's like
Yeah.
a coach and they're giving you advice and you're using all their computing power and then you're organized and you're like, okay, good to go. I got this off my chest. Like
Mm-hmm.
next. So when you're bringing up the points of efficiency, you can't beat that efficiency.
Yeah, yeah, true. And it really becomes a great thought partner in brainstorming. I had a lengthy GPT conversation, actually voiceover. I call mine, I mean, I guess it's what ChatGPT calls it, Breeze, about why our resume is still a thing, because that's a weird, quirk about humanity that I've been so interested in. Like, why is it a thing? Like, why are we still teaching people how to write resumes when the experience overall, like as a hiring manager for me for the last 4 years or so, but hiring students all the way to like professional staff has been a pain. I find it to be the most challenging experience. And then, students hate doing it, but it's still here. And I had this lengthy conversation about it, and it was fascinating. And, one of the areas that it brought up is around regulations and, policies and resumes as a way to like objectively understand, people's skills and backgrounds. Um, and then my, former background in labor relations and labor law, like kind of suddenly got triggered. And I was like, oh yeah, it's interesting, because I was in a union as a union executive. And anyway, so very fascinating, even if it just means meandering dialogues.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. I think for some people, probably it's very anxiety provoking.
It
And again,
is.
I'm not here to say how you should feel. I think I'm here to say, don't be afraid of feeling things, and rather than shutting down, then feel all those things and channel it into a reflective, critical discourse, or even if it's internal dialogue, and yeah, add value to the conversation.
I agree. And for anyone listening that might feel the fear, no word of a lie, 2 weeks ago, and I'll post a video. I'm planning on it, but we had a student terrified of public speaking, and she was practicing with a digital human, so kind of like what you're saying, and practicing, and then she got to the point where she was comfortable enough to speak in front of like the heads of Microsoft, the heads of this school. And that for me was a pivotal moment of, oh wow, this really changed this person's life, because now they feel comfortable enough to overcome their fear talking to these you know, this environment that isn't real and that is safe. So if anything, anyone listening, like, make mistakes with these environments, because you can ask the questions, what about resumes? Or maybe you had a difficult situation with your boss and you want to talk about it, or you're
Mhm.
brainstorming ideas like me in marketing, or you're trying to get a job and you want to know. So I would look at it as a safe place to. It was such a good conversation. I wanted to keep
Yeah.
going and then not throw David in for 1 second, sort of thing.
We can clearly see why the two of us get along well.
Like, let's
Throwing
keep
things in
talking
and
about
out.
this. It's really, well, I think it's insightful and important for people to know, and understand even that fear comment of, oh wow, like I never looked at it from this perspective or that perspective. Uh,
Mhm.
but I wanted to thank you so much for coming on this podcast. It's so wonderful to have you. I think you brought up a trunk or a trove of amazing insights, and I think it's going to be very beneficial to all the listeners. If someone wants to learn about who is Dinuka and how can I get a hold of him, is LinkedIn the best spot?
Yeah, I would say that is the best spot. You can just find me and just click the connect button. That's great. And I'm active in there. I usually talk about mostly very benign things, but things that bring me a lot of joy. And usually it's celebrating my students or cool things in the community. And yeah, it's been a very positive experience by happenstance falling into career development. It brings me a lot of joy, and I love working with graduate students and students in general. So
And you're making a huge impact. So thank you for that. All right.
thank
Well,
you very
thanks so
much.